Hello to all of our Real Talk listeners slash viewers. Y'all have heard us fangirl in last week, 2 weeks ago. That's how time works. Episode. We are so excited to have K.M. Walton. She's letting us call her Kate. The author of Cracked, Empty, and Ultimatum on Real Talk. We have literally already just spent 20 minutes talking her ear off about how much we loved her books. But we promise to let y'all hear from Kate. Kate is a former middle school language arts teacher and a teaching coach, and she is passionate about education and ending peer bullying. She lives in Pennsylvania with her family, and you can visit her online at kmwalton.com, and we will be sure to link that. And we are just absolutely so excited to have you. As we talked about in our last episode, Jesse had the idea to reach out to you from reading your books all in one weekend. And then I can subsequently vouch that these books are so amazing. I also read Empty all in one sitting. I mean, I went into it being like, oh, I'll read for like an hour today, then get back into it. Read for 3.5 hours straight, didn't put it down until it was over. So we will definitely dig in and talk about the books with you because we have so many thoughts, even more than we already talked your ear off about. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for asking me. It's such an honor, and to have both of you have such strong reactions is just phenomenal. It makes an author's heart happy. Yeah.
Well, you definitely made our hearts happy with the books, and we do appreciate you coming on here. Um, and I do have a question for you because I know you are an author, but you're also as a middle school teacher. I know you were having a career, which I can't imagine is an easy job being a middle school teacher. Could you tell us how or if one career influenced the other?
Well, I did leave the classroom in '09, so I
Okay.
haven't been in the classroom since then, but I did teach for 12 years.
Wow.
And I wrote my very first book while I was teaching, which is not Cracked, Empty, or Ultimatum. It was a middle grade that was about a 12-year-old girl who could not read, but she couldn't read because she was half alien, which is like, to me, the greatest story ever, but it has never sold. So
Mm.
but I got my first agent when I wrote the book Cracked, which used to be called Everything's Not Lost, which I know you know if you read the book that that's the Coldplay song that I put in there.
Mm-hmm.
But they felt that it was better to shorten it down, Simon and Schuster. But none of my books are based on any of my students. But while I was teaching, I definitely made my number one goal um, to focus on teaching kindness and empathy. No matter if I always taught language arts, a little bit of science and social studies one year, but I still got the kindness and empathy somehow wiggled in there, even if I was teaching about Rome, because to me, that was like the whole purpose for me was that to let kids kind of like guide them and show them to see each other rather than the labels that we like to smack on each other's foreheads. So that kind of was, I guess, the foundation of my writing, my books. Because I everybody who knows me in real life said, of course, your first book is about bullying. That does not surprise me. Um, but none of the situations were real. None of the characters were based on anybody. I really literally made them up. But my purpose for writing them and teaching really did go hand in hand. Even
Right.
back when I wrote them in, like, I wrote my first book in '08, and I think I wrote Cracked in probably '09. And then it took a while for it to come out and everything. But yeah, so I was still in teaching mode when I wrote it.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
So
A teacher and writing. That is is a lot all at once.
it's a lot,
That's
yeah.
incredible. And gosh, middle school, that is like the hardest time. So grateful for teachers like you that really take such a compassionate hand. That's a whole other thing that we could talk for 5 days about.
Oh,
But
I know.
we did seriously love your books. So in hearing that the characters were made up completely, not based on any students. Could you tell us maybe where some of the inspiration for these stories came from and what you might hope that your readers take away when they read your books?
Absolutely. So Cracked, I was at a writers conference in New York, SCBWI, and I heard this editor speak, and he said, I really love books from dual perspectives. And so for some reason that like never dawned on me. Again, I was still kind of new to this whole thing, but I went back to my hotel room and I wrote a T chart, which I still have, was on a piece of paper, and I put bully and victim at the top. And I just started to like kind of brainstorm these two boys. And that I left New York with a very loose outline. I really don't outline. I just kind of sit down and write, and I don't know how it's going to end or anything. I don't even really know the characters. And so that is definitely how Cracked started. Empty, I was still teaching when I wrote that book too. And that there was a story, I'm pretty sure it was either the end of 08 or the beginning of 09 that was on the news. It was a 5th grade girl, so she was 10, and she was being bullied horribly, and she hung herself in her closet. She's 10, and her bully went onto Facebook and wrote mission accomplished.
Oh,
This
wow.
is true. This is true. So again, I'm in the classroom, I'm teaching, and now I'm teaching language arts. So I'm all about putting your life on the page. And I shared that story with my students, and they were just gobsmacked. And I knew I had to explore the darkness that can enter someone's heart from other people just consistently pulling the rug out from under you, or just beating you down with words. And I wanted my readers to know that what you say and what you type to each other, it matters. It all matters. Even if you're a keyboard warrior, what you're saying, it's landing in a human being's, mind. And so I didn't know who that character was going to be, Dell. I didn't know anything about her yet, but I knew I wanted to write that book, and I wanted to see how far a character would go to when they're pushed to just complete isolation. And I also wanted my readers, actually of all my books, to put themselves in the shoes of the silently suffering, because silently suffering people are everywhere. And I used to tell my students, all you have to do is look for them. You just got to see them, and just peel back the shades that you have on your eyes and see, oh, that kid doesn't sit with anyone any day at lunch. Go up and say, hi. It's a small thing. Look over your shoulder. Hold the door for the person behind you. When someone drops their books, don't laugh. Bend down and pick them up with them. See the human beings in front of you. These are not labels. These are not, oh, that's that kid, that's that group. These are people. And so I wanted my readers, especially with Empty, because I knew what I was going to do at that ending. And my agent at the time, she signed me for Cracked. So she knew that I wrote, dark, and I didn't hold back, and I did not pull any punches. I just went for it. She said, and when I told her what my ending was going to be, she said, do it. And she said, your motivation is pure, your reasons are pure. And that was why I wanted a kid reading that book to see, oh my gosh, I have the power to either lift someone up out of the darkness or just destroy their life. Like, I have that power. And what are you going to do with that power? And when my agent sent it to my editor at the time at Simon & Schuster, the head of the imprint, so my editor walked to the head of the imprint's door, and she was just crying. And she's like, we have to have this book. You have to make an offer. This book, I can't believe it. Kind of like what you were saying before we started, that it made you feel so deeply. And so I got the offer on Empty. And I know if you read any of the reviews on Empty, people either love it or they want to push me down a flight of stairs. And I get it, because you get attached to Dell, and you want her to succeed, and you want her to reach out to a guidance counselor. You want her to get help. But sometimes the help doesn't come. And I wanted the help not to come. I wanted it to be not that every kid ever, goes down that path. A lot of kids get help, and a lot of schools are there to get that scoop. But some schools are not. What happened to the 10-year-old girl that, hung herself in her closet? Nobody saved her. So I wanted kids to see the impact of that, and I wanted them to feel that pain, and I wanted them to throw my book across the room and say, why didn't someone help her? Well, then I want you to be that person to help the people in your life. So that's my long-winded answer.
It was wonderful, and just so true to what happens with Dell. We're trying our best not to give spoilers, but
I know, I know.
you know that you can see how, like, I mean, even the girl who's supposed to be her best friend, like, she thinks she's being her friend, but Dell, I
Yeah.
mean, just your words rang with me because it was so powerful for me in the book, where she was like, no one sees me, she doesn't see
Oh,
me. And
nope,
that
nope.
none
Yeah.
of them are seeing the big picture of what everyone is saying. They probably just only think, oh, I just made a little joke, like, I'm joking, I'm
Exactly.
kidding, you know.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
yeah, that's such I mean, just so amazing, but I won't, I'll stop.
Yeah, it's definitely an amazing book, and you can tell by talking to you, you have so much passion for writing. Could you talk to us about, where your passion comes from and why you love writing?
I I've been writing when someone asked me this, like when I first got into this whole profession, I wrote my first book in '08, and I realized I've been writing ever since I've been a little kid. Like I actually have my 7th and 8th grade diary that you would literally cry yourself hysterically laughing if I read out loud the things that I wrote about. So I've been writing in a diary and journaling, and like I wrote a picture book in like 1994, and so just trying to, dip my toe in stuff. And I wrote like a middle grade book in '94, and I still have all my rejections, which were everything was by mail back then from
Yeah.
HarperCollins, no agent, no nothing. We read your story, but it's not right or whatever. So it took me, like, my first book came out in 2012, so it took me a long time to actually get published. But I'd say my passion is, like, I feel like writing makes me feel alive. Not that I feel, deadened with the rest of my life. I do love my life, and I don't, thank goodness, don't suffer from depression like some of my characters. But writing, it really does, it like unlocks something in my brain. It's very hard to explain. Like when I'm in the middle of drafting a book, like everything, like I'll look out my window and things just are brighter, and I'll hear a song and I'm like, oh, that's inspiration. Or I'll hear a name out when I'm walking around. I'm like, oh, that could be a character. Like everything just kind of like comes, it's so strange. It sounds like it's almost like out of body. Um, but I just love it. I love creating things and making things up, and I don't, like I said, I don't um outline it all. Like I just kind of do that little brainstorm of like bullet pointed list, and then I just start writing. Like I literally didn't know that the first book cracked, that those boys were going to end up in the psych ward. I didn't know that. So as I'm writing, I was like, oh, okay, so this is going to happen so that I could make this happen. And then I didn't know how they were going to end up in there together realistically. And same thing with Ultimatum. Like that book was so hard to write because I changed, past tense to present tense. And I can't tell you, I probably wrote about 30 chapters in the wrong tense, and I would go, so I had to go
Oh
back
wow.
and redo it. I would catch it while I was doing it, but that was a challenging book to write. But that one was based off of my father-in-law. He passed away in a hospice, and my husband has one brother, and I watched the two of them, who are very unlike my Vance and Oscar. They're best friends, and I watched this whole thing, and I'm like, oh, what would it be like if two brothers were with their dad and they did not know or like each other? What in the world would that be like? So that I asked permission if I could kind of use those scenes in the hospice. They were very, very, those things really did happen. And both my husband and my brother-in-law said, yes, do it. But that's not my father-in-law. But just that little nugget was based on
Yeah.
reality.
And I
Yeah.
love hearing about your writing process too. That was like, I'm like envisioning like a movie about that, like where it's like, you know, the inspiration hits you and you kind of go from like sepia to color and like it all blooms forth.
Yeah, it's
Really
true.
beautiful to hear. Um,
Yeah.
in talking about, like, let's say how you mentioned like a character like Dell, someone who is really struggling with thoughts of suicide, and you know, Jesse and I both work with suicide, and you know, I've worked in clinical practice directly with suicide a lot. It's absolutely my passion and advocacy. And you know, like I mentioned, you can't help but go into a book, you know, especially a fiction book, kind of being like, I'm sure this is going to be great for readers, but I'm going to be able to pick it apart with my clinical brain, you know, because
Yes.
we just all have that hubris about us a little bit. But I found your depiction of the way that Dell struggled so incredibly real that I mean it affected me like this was a client of mine that I was watching.
Wow.
So, um that very real depiction, just no cliches of how someone who's struggling on the inside can look so different than what other people are seeing on the outside.
Yes.
What type of research or insight did you pull to be able to write from such this like really respectful and truthful perspective?
I, I really didn't do any research, which I didn't. I just like my agent at the time, she said, your writing is very instinctual, because she knew I did not have a degree. I was not in English. I mean, in English, I was teaching middle school. And when I read John Green's Looking for Alaska and A.S. King's Please Ignore Vera Dietz, which those two books were not in my sixth grade classroom, but I read them. I didn't know that authors were allowed to write so real and raw. So they really inspired me to write all three of my novels, because those two authors do not hold back. They're very real. And I don't know if that would be considered research, but it definitely influenced me. However, I also come from, I'm a teacher, but I have a gigantic family. I have 28 first cousins and I have three younger sisters. So two of my sisters are social workers. One works with adjudicated youth, and like she's been doing that for forever. And one is a clinical social worker in a hospital, and then my cousin is like a therapist. So I sent the scenes of Victor and Bull in the hospital, and also some parts of Empty to them, especially the parts where they were with a therapist. And I just wanted to make sure that this was authentic, and what the therapist was saying was real. And the therapist, Lisa, that's my cousin Lisa in
Oh
real life.
wow.
And Nicole is my sister Nicole in Ultimatum. So that's all real. But yeah, so I just I wanted kids. One thing I know kids can't. At least my students, they definitely did not like books where it felt like they were being preached to, or like, oh, this person's trying to sneakily teach me something. I just wanted to tell the story at like as real as possible and see if that could land with a kid. And it so far the emails that I get from kids and at events, the kids that come up to me, like so many times kids come up to me and say, you wrote my story. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you okay? All different, each book, they'll say different things like, I don't get along with my brother, or I was just in the psych ward with my bully. That was at my very first public
Oh
speaking
wow.
engagement. This kid came up to me. I
Really?
was like, what? Um, and he was such a doll. I actually gave him a copy of Cracked. I said, you're not buying this. I'm giving this to you. But yeah, so I that's the research that I do. I guess it's like real life kind of stuff, you know?
Wow, you just must be like incredibly just like perceptive and just taken so much.
I try.
That's amazing. And I just also really appreciate you like consulting with social workers and therapists,
Yes,
because I know for me, and it can make me a very poor movie watching partner sometimes, but it's like you get taken right out of the story when you're like, that is not what would happen. That is not what someone would say.
exactly.
This is not what would
Yes,
happen in this therapy session, not with someone that's worth their salt. So,
right. And a couple things my cousin Lisa changed. She said, that's not how I would start. And my sister Nicole, she's this is funny. She reads Cracked and she says, Kate, you have kids in hospital. This is in my first draft. You have kids in hospital gowns. They're not going to be in hospital gowns, because I had a scene where it was funny that a draft was going up. I
oh,
think they're like, she's like, people are in sweatpants, and I'm like, oh, and she's like in no shoelaces and nothing where they could hurt themselves. I'm like, oh my gosh, Nicole. So she kind of opened my eyes to that. That was
Yeah.
just like a detail.
Yeah, and it's so funny that you say that because like when I was reading Cracked, I was like, she has it dead on. Like she has it dead on what it would be like to
Yeah,
be in a psych ward and the way the setting is and everything. And then in the ultimatum, with hospice and the awkward, visitors that, that come
yeah,
in and your classmates and like it's just everything just was so perfect. I mean, there's not one thing that I think about any of your books that I would have changed. Like I really believe the all three of them were very well written. And I was gonna ask you what inspired you for Ultimatum, but you said you saw your brother and or your husband and his brother. And
Yeah.
that's one thing I did like about Ultimatum is that it was like you were in presence and then you went to past.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you said that was difficult. And I was about to say, I was gonna ask you, I bet that was really hard to write because I would
It's
be in the
hard.
mind frame of the presence and then it would
Yes.
go into the past and I was like, I'd be like, oh, where we at now? You know,
I know.
but it went aligned perfectly. Like it went great. And I think it made it a better book because you can really truly understand what both of these boys are going through.
Yeah.
And it's so sad that like if they would have talked sooner,
I
then
know.
then
I
their
know.
whole life they wouldn't have thought each other hated each other. And
Yes. Less suffering.
yeah, and especially like being there with their dad and stuff, it's just really powerful. um and I know you said Ultimatum, you saw with your husband and brother, and when you decided to write Ultimatum and did the brothers hating each other, was it hard to come up with like ideas on how to like balance it out from the presence to the past?
Actually, no. Like when I'm in it, when I decide I'm going to write a new book, I do not suffer from writer's block. It's almost it's like this story like is being pulled out of me with, wild horses. I just sit down and I write until I can't keep my eyes open anymore, and then I repeat. And I'm a very fast first drafter. Like I typically can write a first draft. Now they're short; they're like 38,000 words in maybe like 6 weeks, and
Oh,
then I go back and I get to know the characters more and puff it up and add more details and start the revision process. But um my editor never ever removed anything from any of my manuscripts. She always added.
Mm.
She added because she said, you need more, you need more. I want you to go deeper. Like the fact that Dell was a softball player, that was a whole storyline that was added once that
Oh,
novel
really?
was bought, because she was not she didn't play a sport. And I'm like, oh, I love that idea, because it just deepens her character and gives her a new set of people to interact with. And but yeah, as far as like first drafting and coming up with ideas, like I'm big, like I said, with the bullet pointed list. And when I give writing workshops, people always say, oh, I could never write a novel. I could never write a novel. And I say, can you write a list? And they say, yes. And I say, well, then that's step one. That's how I start every book I ever write. And then I keep adding to the list and making it more detailed and like just adding and adding and making it grow. And then once I have like a real kind of solid sense of the people and a little bit of the plot, then I just start writing. I have no
wow.
idea how my books were going to end. I really didn't know if the brothers were going to go their separate ways or come together, and I won't give that away. Like it really could have gone either way.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if Victor and Bull were going to like see eye to eye, forge some type of friendship, or just go on their separate ways with respect. Again, I didn't know. Um, so yeah.
That's
Wow.
amazing how you just write. I love that because
Yeah.
that's how I function in life. But
Yeah, I know.
if
And
you,
I have friends who, like Tiffany Schmidt, she is a Post-it girl. So she does a whole wall of Post-its and knows every chapter and every, beginning and ending of every chapter. And I'm like, I don't know how you do that. She's like, I don't know how you do what you do. I need to know the ending. So it's fascinating how everybody's brain works differently.
Yeah.
like your real like relationship and like viewing of a story like playing out in real time as you write it, like that's
Yeah,
just really, really amazing to me. I just
Yeah.
love that.
it's exhilarating, I have to say.
Well, I read Empty, as I mentioned before, which is where the character Dell is from, if we haven't explicitly said that.
Yes.
Um, a reminder to everybody, because we are talking about books with tough subjects, and I'm going to
Yes.
talk some more again about um Dell experiencing thoughts of suicide. And we just want to remind everybody again that 988 is always available 24 hours a day via link. Jesse and I's agency is so proud to be a 988 contact center in Louisiana. And we just want to remind you that 988 is there for whatever you're going through 24 hours a day, free, and it is confidential no matter your age. If you are underage, that is still your private conversation. So please know, no matter your age, that is you get someone just there for you for whatever you're going through. You just need to get the gunk out, get the stress out. Are you having thoughts of suicide, even to a place where you think that you might attempt and you can't keep yourself safe? There's
Mhm.
never anything too small or too big to reach out for. So please just remember those numbers, call or text 988 anytime you need to talk.
Absolutely.
But digging back in, not a but, and digging back into Empty. Again, I feel like I could just talk for like 3 days straight about this book. And just not even about the book, about my feelings that I had while reading the book, and then go into what happened in the book. But I really loved, like you've said, kind of the dual perspective where we get Delle's inner dialogue of what she's going through compared to how other students are treating her, and
Mhm.
that you can see like both sides of it. Like these are, kids that think they're playing around, or yeah, I'm bullying her, but like this is what high school is. And look, she kind of
Right.
takes it, or she plays into it when she does the
Mhm.
mooing and the stuff like that. But
Exactly.
for Delle's inner dialogue, where she's like, well, this is all I am to people. Nobody sees me. So she's feeling more and more isolated, in suicide theory, that thwarted sense of belongingness, and nobody else can see it. I mean, just so well written. Like her classmates and her friend and her mom even think that she's just like isolating herself and
Yeah.
being too difficult or too cool. And it wasn't
Mhm.
written to any extreme either way. I mean, just see how this can happen. I mean, to
Yeah, it
anybody, and does so tragically.
does.
Um, I thought it was really important in Delle's journey that when she was struggling with thoughts of suicide, that it was never this like intense desire to die, that it was just all of this pain building up until she hits her personal crisis point, which again, I think
Right.
is so amazing the way you wrote this, that we can never tell what someone's crisis point is from the outside. But
No.
that was her crisis point. Her switch flipped, and the pain was too overwhelming. There seemed like there was no other alternative. I mean, when life is causing you this much pain, there is only one other side to that coin. Um, so again, I'm sorry. I just think it was so, so, so well
Oh,
written. Um,
thank you so much.
thank
Really.
you. From your perspective, especially, I mean, just seeing that she still loved her sister so much. I mean, I'd let you know that that just kills me, her and her babies. And I'm an only
Oh,
child, and that hit me so hard.
Yeah.
yes.
And her mom, and what is your main hope? This is a long preamble that I don't even know attaches to my
Okay.
question, but what is your main hope that your readers will take away when they're reading books specific to thoughts of suicide? And what audiences would you recommend a book like Empty for?
So my number one goal when I wrote that book, and I know I talked about this in the beginning, was for readers to put themselves in the shoes of someone who's suffering. But I really want to challenge schools and teachers and counselors to, I mean, there's no way in my mind that no adult in her life couldn't have figured out that this girl was suffering. I don't
Right.
believe it. She was not jovial. She was not putting on a show. So I, to me, all of those adults failed her miserably. Kara is a child. Did she fail her? She did, but she is not a grown up. But everybody, every other person in her life, they failed her. So whenever I give talks, like I work sometimes with pre-service teachers, and that is always my challenge to them. Make it your job to find the kids that are silently suffering. They're not that hard to find
Yeah.
because they're the ones that they're shrinking in their seat when you ask, does anybody have an answer? Bing, bing, bing. That's a kid when I was teaching, I want to work with that kid. I want to find that kid. I want to talk to that kid. And I'm not saying pick on them and call them, say, oh, what do you think? Like that would make them horrified, but just find them in the hallway, talk to them when they come in the morning. You have to find those kids. And like I said, a lot of the time there's a big arrow going over their head. And every time I hear a story of a student suicide, my immediate thought is the adults failed that kid. Whether
Yeah.
it's somebody in that school had to have known that that kid was suffering. And you have to make the time. Put the chalk down, put the eraser down, put your book down, and go talk to the kid. That's the most important thing. Have them come after school. I used to do dialogue journals with I found them to be at risk. No one was telling me these kids were at risk. And I would say, I'm going to make this up. Andy, I see that you're kind of struggling a little bit. And I do this thing called a dialogue journal where I write a letter and then you write a letter back. Cause I know you don't like talking to it makes you uncomfortable. Why do I have to do that? Well, because I kind of want to know what's going on in your head. And I can tell that you don't want to, no, these are 12-year-olds, that you don't want to talk to me. 100% of the time, the kid would say, okay, whether it would be, I'd have to ask 1 or 2 times, and we would write letters back and forth. The guidance counselor was made aware that this was happening. If I ever saw anything, which I never did, about wanting to take their life or a crime or hurting, obviously I would, and I would tell them, if you write anything in here that is going to make me think that you're going to hurt yourself or you're going to hurt somebody else, legally, I have to tell someone.
Yeah.
But the way I would write my letters, I would get them to go deep on the page and peel back those layers. There's this one little girl, not Andy, I'll call her Sarah. She had a very challenging home life. She was babysitting the summer before she came to 6th grade, and she was babysitting her little sister, and the little sister drowned in the pool. So I get her, okay, because the guidance counselor, they always gave me the kids that were the challenge, and I welcome it. And when she was in 5th grade, I must have heard that girl's name 100 times. Can so-and-so please come to the principal's office? Over and over. And I'm like, oh, great. I get her. So first day of school, she starts bullying my autistic girl. She had to sit right by the door. I'm like, not on my watch. So I said, Sarah, can we talk in the hallway? And, I let her know that I saw what she did. She knocked her pencils off the table. And I said, I just want you to know I'm watching. And I don't, that's not how we operate in this room. Fast forward all these months, and we started the dialogue journal. And she had so much rage and anger in her heart. She was a horrible bully. She picked on everyone. She had so much rage and guilt about her sister. And I had her get it out of her on the page. And I remember writing to her, I said, you're the only person on our team of kids that sees the autistic girl. Everyone else just kind of ignores her. You see her. So if you just shifted your perspective, instead of knocking her pencils off, you sharpened them. I think that could help heal some of your anger and your rage. And she wrote back and said, maybe. Her response, maybe. But funny enough, the next day, she sharpened her pencils. I didn't ask her to, but she took them off her desk, and the little girl was like so panicked that she was going to be mean to her. And she's like, no, I'm just going to sharpen them. She sharpened them, and then she sharpened them every single day until the end of the year. And at the end of the year, I would ask my kids in an essay, what do you want to do in 5? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? This girl says she wants to work with special needs kids. Now, I don't know if she ever did, but I was like, all right, that's good. That's good. I think I changed her heart. So that's what I'm trying to say. Find those kids. Don't say, oh, that's just kids. Bullies are going to bully. Boys will be boys. No. Roll your sleeves up and do the hard part. Ruffle feathers. Ruffle them. You're going to save a kid's life.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's my
Yeah.
I'm sweating. I'm getting so passionate about it.
It's so important. And I think always, like what you were saying, like knowing that it's because I think sometimes for grown-ups, quote unquote, and for school faculty, there can be this pressure of like, well, I'm not trained, I won't know the perfect thing
I
to
know.
say.
I heard that all the time. Yeah.
And that it's not about, no one can say the perfect thing, as Brene Brown will tell us. That's not what makes someone better. It's being seen, it's being heard. That's what helps, that connection, and knowing that isolation, feeling so alone. I mean, that's what's killing people. And breaking through that by seeing someone is so amazing.
I wish if I was Dell's teacher, things would be different, but I wasn't. And I had to write that. There are so many scenes in that book that I can't, that's my puppy, if you're hearing. There's so many scenes in that book that when I wrote them, I was like choke sobbing because I just wanted to scoop in and say, I got you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. Let's dialogue journal, me and you. But she didn't have that. So, and she's not alone. There's, any kid that takes their own life, they didn't have that.
Yeah.
They didn't have it. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement. And it's so sad because it seems like suicide is on the rise,
No,
with kids. I mean, I've, I had to get off, sometimes I have to take a break from social media or, you know,
same.
the news,
No.
there was a case not too long ago where the bullies were the daughters of a superintendent for a school, and they
Oh,
actually made the mom shut down her TikTok and Facebook, but she wasn't calling out the girls' names. She never released the names, but she found her daughter,
right.
and her daughter committed suicide, and everybody was like in her corner. They were like, like went to the school hundreds of times, like, hey, this
Oh,
is going on,
that
please.
makes me so mad.
Yeah, because she was begging the schools, that she was
Yeah,
in the
do
process
something.
of taking the girl out to put her in another school, and she was just a little too late. Unfortunately,
Yeah, yeah,
the girl did commit suicide, and um when it all went down, everybody was talking about it on Facebook, TikTok, everything, because her story was so huge, because the judge sided with the bullies. The judge told the mom to quit making videos. She had to shut down her TikTok. She couldn't have her Facebook. So everyone's like, "Oh no, if you can't talk for her, we will."
right,
And so
right.
they did. I
Wow,
remember just like thousands of videos like was standing up for this girl, and
wow.
they were like, just because she was the superintendent's daughter, or the school principal, something like that, they were
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like, that's
yeah.
not right. She,
Connected. Yeah.
yeah, that she needs to be punished. They need to be held accountable,
Yes.
because there was so much evidence that proved that she bullied. And like in my head, I'm like, man, I wish she would have reached out to 988 or knew
I
about 988,
know
or something like that. Because
something.
yeah, because it's, I've worked on the lines, and 9 times out of 10, when I'm talking to kids, they just want to be heard. Like you said, they just need to feel like somebody cares without judgment, that someone
Yes,
is not gonna make them feel, stupid for the way they feel, or,
exactly.
turn around and be like, well, you're just a kid, you're just going through it, it gets
Right.
better. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to
Or
hear that
it's
it
a
gets,
phase.
yeah, it's
I
just
hate
a
when
phase. They don't want to hear that it gets better, because right now to them, it's not better,
it's not better.
and it's not going to be better tomorrow either. So
Oh,
to give false lies, and that's what I would always tell them. I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, it's going to be, because you reached out to us, tomorrow's going to be 100% better.
right.
No, but how can we get there? How can we take
Yes.
little steps to make
Yes.
you feel better, about
Exactly.
what's going on? Like, what can we do to help? And, you know, just empathy goes a long way, and
Oh
just
yeah.
sitting with somebody and just listening
Yes.
to them goes so far, that
I
people just
know.
don't realize the kindness is free. Just
Exactly.
smile at them, give them a hug. Like you said,
Exactly.
if they drop their
See
books,
them.
don't laugh,
Don't
pick it
laugh.
up.
Pick them
What's
up.
funny about someone dropping their books
Don't
anyways? Like,
know.
I don't get that. So I'm just
Either.
like, it's not hard to literally change someone's life. And and everyone, has been saying, like, I've been seeing these posts, like, if you just spend 12 minutes with somebody, you can change their whole way of thinking. And I truly believe that. Like, if you could just listen to them and
Yes.
see them,
Yes.
and not, the labels that people are putting them at, or not, making fun of them because they don't have the nicest clothes. You don't know what their home life is
Nope.
like.
Nope.
So don't assume. Just,
No.
be nice. Just be nice. Just
I
be
know.
nice. That's all you
Just
got to do, is just be nice. I feel like it's so easy. Like, the answer is so simple on
I
how we can
know.
save so many people, but
Yeah.
nobody wants to do it. Nobody
No.
wants to be that person that is nice to who everyone's making fun of, because then they don't want to lose their social status. But who
Exactly.
cares?
Who cares?
Because I don't talk to
Exactly.
anybody that I went to high school with. I mean, maybe a couple people, but I don't
Right.
remember, you know, any of that. So I'm
No.
like, at some point, none of this is going to matter. But the person that killed themselves because of what you said, that's going to matter, because you just
Exactly.
changed that person's family's whole life
Whole
with the
life.
words that you said.
I
And
know.
here you go
And they
on.
changed their life too, because
Yeah,
now they have that on their conscience. Hopefully,
yeah,
if
yeah.
if
Hopefully,
they
hopefully they, you know, you know, grow up or
feel
something, or
guilt.
yeah, see the light. But I know we've talked about Cracked and Ultimatum and Empty. Do you have a favorite book that you have written, or favorite character?
I really don't. Like they are like my children. And I have two sons, equally love them both. And I just love, I think because I put my characters through so much that and when I write as them, that I just feel so connected to all five of them so deeply. I really don't have a favorite. I just love them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's a
do.
good answer. I mean, that just shows that you're, involved and you're emotionally attached. And I get it because I love
Yes.
all of them too, all five of them. I couldn't pick a favorite either because they all go through so much, and you just, like I said, you connect differently with each one,
Yeah.
and it's just like I said, it's amazing how you write, and it's I've never read books that have been so raw and real that where every character I could be like, oh wow, like I feel that, like I feel that in my heart, like,
Mhm.
and everything is so raw. The emotions are, you can feel these emotions. Like, I've never lost a parent, thank God. I still have my dad and mom, but when Oscar and Vance were going through their things, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
like that's deep. Like, and then I would picture like, how would that feel like with me and my sister if this was
I
my
know.
dad?
Right.
And even though me and my sister have a great relationship, you still think about those type of things. And I really was like, wow, like that's awful. And then you're empty. I was bullied for being overweight in high school, and I
Mhm.
didn't wear, I wasn't very girly. I was tomboyish. So, I mean, I could, when, she would moo or stuff, and just be like, well, that's what they like, because it gave her
Mhm.
some type of attention. But
Yes.
she realized at the end, like, it wasn't the attention that she wanted or needed. It's just for that moment, the guy that she thought was cute, she was making laugh, she was making other people laugh. And I get that because I used to be the silly one. I used to like
Right.
throw myself out of chairs for some reason to make the whole class laugh.
Right. Right.
But I was struggling, I was
Yeah.
literally struggling. And I am so glad and thankful for 988 because I wish there was something like that when, I was growing up because,
Mhm.
like I went through a lot because of, the bullying and stuff. And granted, my parents, they didn't 100% understand it, but at least they tried. They took me to therapy. They
Right.
took steps to make
Cared.
it, yeah, to show me that they cared and we would
Yeah.
get through it. So with that book, I literally, some of the parts of it was very hard to read because I know what that pain feels
Mhm.
like, and I know what it feels like to be sitting there thinking like, oh, well, suicide is, the only answer for me at this
Yeah.
point because, and I have tried to commit suicide. I've been very honest about my journey on the podcast and,
Right.
I've survived and, very grateful that I did. But that's why I
Yes.
think it's so important for these books to be talked about and to talk with the author and to put these interviews out here because there's somebody that needs to see it. Like somebody needs to read it. Somebody needs to hear it, just because there's so many lives you can save that you don't realize you're saving, and from your, when I look at your books, I'm like, man, if I would have read this, I think I would have maybe have done that differently because I would have, been like, oh wow, like this is true. Like,
Right.
this is how I feel. Maybe this is what I need to voice out. Because again,
Exactly.
sometimes you don't know how to voice it either.
No, I mean,
So
these are kids that we're talking
yeah,
about, and that's why the adults in kids' lives should play a really big role. And if a kid, sometimes kids write to me with like the most heartbreaking stories, and I always ask them, who in your life do you have that you trust? What grown up do you have? Do you have a parent, a teacher, a guidance counselor? And sometimes the kids will write back and say, I have no one. And I
yeah,
say, well, then you're going to have to trust yourself, and you cannot believe the lies that are your brain is telling you because
yeah,
it's all lies. You
Right.
cannot believe those lies. You have to journal. And I always like say, what are you into? If you're into skateboarding, go read every book you can on skateboarding. It'll plug you back in a little bit to what it feels like to be among the living, because
Yeah.
they're like dipping the toe into, I think it would be better if I wasn't here. It's never better
right.
if you
It's
weren't
never
here.
better.
Yes,
It's never
that's super
better.
true for anybody ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thinking about self-care, and I think just in a little bit with conjunction of us talking about kindness and kindness being free, which it absolutely is, but also remembering that, you have to keep your own cup full to be able to fill someone else's. So, especially for if, you know, any of our younger folks that like you can't always be a superhero for everybody, but you can
No,
be sure that you are never participating in cruelty. And there is
exactly.
a big difference between
Exactly.
that. But there is no shame if you are drained and you know you can't be that person in a given moment
Exactly.
to be
Yes,
someone's support system. Just make sure
absolutely.
someone is. Never make this
Yes,
go in silence or in secret. Reach out to
exactly.
an adult, reach out to a teacher, reach out to a parent that you know, but there is no shame if you are drained as well. Just don't participate in cruelty and just make sure somebody knows.
So true. So true. And when you mention self-care, that's one of the things that I talk about when kids write to me. My way of self-care is I journal every single solitary day. I write
Mhm.
2 pages and I get all of the gunk, because it's gunk in there,
Yeah.
it onto the page, and it like just takes it and it takes it out of you, and it's almost like a little mini release. And so I always recommend, and I did that with my students too. We would journal every morning, and there would be just a free write. This is not graded. I'm never going to read this. This was like their personal journal. Because to me, I don't know if it works for everybody, but for me, it is such a great way to separate myself, because I'm a finger picker. So I do this, and I've got Band-Aids that I'm constantly putting on. And I was really good. I had them covered for this interview so I wouldn't have bloody stumps. But when I have my anxiety, because it's like an OCD thing, and I'm all amped up when I write about it, it like takes it one step over, and it's like not in me, it's now in front of me. So I can like observe it and kind of pick it apart and say, oh, I didn't know I was doing that because of that. So like that to me is a great way for a child, no matter what age. If there were kindergartners, you can draw what you're feeling. Keep a journal. Talk to people that you trust and that you love, whether it's a friend, an aunt, a parent, a teacher. Like, don't hold it in. That's what I wish that Dell had more of in her life. Kara just wasn't capable of giving that to her.
Yeah.
Her little sister Maggie, which, by the way, Maggie Badeggi, that little nickname, that's what I call my sister Megan.
Oh,
I know, and my sister Megan loves that I did that. But yeah, like find someone that you can talk to, and that you trust. Don't like put your heart out there to somebody that you don't trust, because it
yeah.
could backfire. Um,
Including Chat GPT, people. That is not a
oh,
Yeah.
therapist.
I keep that is a computer. That's not a person, and it freaks me out that kids are getting like mental health advice from Chat GPT. That's all new, and I'm kind of thankful I'm not in the classroom right now, because I don't even know how I would advise against that, except
Yeah.
just don't do it. Don't do it. You have a guidance counselor in your school, and if you don't like that guidance counselor, there's a, like you said, 988, like call
Not
that number.
bots.
Yeah, they just talked about a case with Chat GPT on the news where it it kind of assisted a suicide because the boy was telling chat I said him, but telling the computer
Yeah.
certain things, and it offered to teach them how to tie a better knot. And then the
Wow.
boy said something, and Chat GPT, which you can look up the article, told them that they would recommend them not telling their mom how they feel right now because it can make their mom feel too emotional. And that kid committed suicide. And people are like still reaching out, and I don't have anything against, AI with certain things, because there's some cool things that they can
Of course.
they can do, but they are not a person. Like a computer literally taught this kid how to do his loop better, and he told the Chat GPT what it was for, suicide. Like
Wow.
not going to be flagged. No one's going to reach out because of that. I mean, it's a computer you're talking to.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a formula. And just
Yeah.
again, that like not only is ChatGPT not a person, it is not a mental health professional or anybody
No.
who is trained.
No, it's
And to
not.
remind everybody again that 988 and specifically all of the
Yes.
Young's helplines, never a bot, always a person.
A
Yeah.
person,
Um,
exactly, who's trained and wants to hear
trained,
you and
yes.
see you and validate you.
Yeah.
And is not, there is no formula. I do have one bone to pick with Dell. And
Hear it.
that is from when she said that her brown curly frizzy hair was the ugliest hair. And I was like, hey now.
Okay, so Dell, like I said earlier, I have never struggled with depression or suicidal thoughts. However, Dell's relationship with food is my relationship with food, and Dell's hair was my hair because I did not know how to do my hair when I was a kid. So it was like so not what I wanted.
I went through
And
it
I
too.
grew up in the like I was a kid in the 70s. I graduated high school in 85. So like when I was younger, I just wanted, do you guys know who Farrah Fawcett is? Like with the
Yes.
beautiful blue.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted that. All the girls at my elementary school had that hair, and I had this hair. And my hair was brown, like that's my real color under there. So yes, I think that was a little bit of my childhood frustration coming out of Dell, but I love my hair now because I know how to do it.
Yeah.
Curly hair club. And I was like, hey, Del,
Exactly,
you're
curly hair.
shaming my hair.
I
I'm
know.
just kidding. Um, if anything, just made me feel like no, because I went through that too. Where I mean, when my hair got curly when I went through puberty, it was straight when I was
Oh,
younger,
wow.
and then
Wow.
that was like in the like early 2000s when like the stick straight hair was in.
Oh,
So I just
yes.
ended up with this frizz.
I know. I know. Oh, you
Yeah.
froze. But yes, believe me. And my three younger sisters, we all, both my parents had this hair. And my mom used to put big giant rollers, like they were like the size to make her hair straighter and kind of big curls. So
Yeah.
this hair just wasn't like this natural curl just wasn't in. But it kind of came in the 80s. And then I'm like, all right, well, this is it. This
Yeah.
is all I got.
Yeah, and I love curly hair. It's so funny because I wear my hair short, and I always say you have what you don't want because my sister has really thin, like brittle hair, and I have like
Right.
when I grow it out, it's really thick, and I can literally put water in my hands and scrunch it up, and it will look like I like did a wave brush in it. So my mom and dad were very upset that I cut my hair because they're like, "You have the perfect hair," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I just want to roll out of bed, brush it, and I don't even
Yeah.
want it, you know."
It's your hair. You can do whatever
Yeah.
you want. Yeah.
But I think it was funny that they mentioned hair and stuff because me and my sister would be like, I hate that you cut your hair. Like she's like, I'm just trying to get an inch to grow, and here you are, you know. So that is it. That was funny, but I love curly hair. I think it's so cool, like when people have different types of hair, and I don't hate. I guess I just don't shame on nobody. You know, I think everything's
Oh,
unique. You know, I think everything
exactly.
about people is unique. But unfortunately, you know, as a kid, when you're growing up, you don't look at it like that. You just see the
Want to
negative because
fit
that's all
in.
that's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what everybody's pushing out. So
I
it's
know.
not,
It's
it's not,
so hard to be. I know from when I was a teacher, kids, they just wanted to be like everybody else.
yeah,
Not all kids. I could always tell the super confident, they would come in their, wild outfits and crazy. They didn't care. They had so much confidence. They wanted to be an individual. And I kind of got that way like in eighth grade-ish. Like I went to school with Princess Leia buns
oh, nice.
for
Love
real.
that.
Yeah, and I regret that because I was sitting right next to the boy I had the crush on, and he was like, "Nice hair." I'm like, "Thank you." But yeah,
And you're like, it
kids
is.
just,
Thank you.
I know it took me a while to get it into these buns, but um, yeah, kids just want to fit in, and I always used to champion the kids when I was a teacher that were individuals and wanted to
Yeah,
stand out and wore whatever they wanted. I thought that was so cool.
yeah. Yeah, I have two nephews, and he's like, I want to be Riz. I need this haircut. And my other nephew, he has autism, and
Okay.
he's just so happy. So
Yeah.
he doesn't care. He's like, I don't care. Like he just
Right.
wears, you know, whatever he wants, and you know, he's so cute, but he's so genuine. And his brother, you know, he thinks he's in SWAT or something. He's training right now. He's 7 years old, or he just turned 8.
Oh, that's
Um,
hysterical.
oh no, he just turned 7, but he's just watching them grow, and I told my sister, I was like, just make sure you talk to them about like bullying and stuff because I know how the world can be when you're, like she's really worried about my, nephew that has autism. And I'm like, just make him aware that because he's not a fun bully, like to be bullied. Like
Right.
his brother
Yeah.
bullies him to play around and he
Yeah.
just smiles and laughs. He doesn't
Right.
understand. But as
Right.
he gets older, he will,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
told my sister, I was like, just make sure you let him know, like, Auntie's got him. Like, Auntie ain't gonna let nothing happen to him. Like, he can call Auntie
Exactly.
anytime, like, but
Yes.
just make sure you talk to these kids because I was like, Jennifer, you really never know. Like, I was like, even though Nicholas is, great and the kids love him and he's sweet, I said, you know, people bully for everything. Like, they
I
both
know.
wear glasses. And I know that, you
Yeah.
know, people will say things, and I am grateful that it does seem like our generation has opened up and become a lot more open-minded with certain things. So
Yes,
I am grateful for that. But again, I just I push out to my nephews, hey, listen, things, are this way, but if you ever need to talk, or, if anyone says anything that hurts your feelings, let us know. Like, talk to us. We're
exactly.
here for you. Just I
Yes,
don't ever want, them to think that, they can't talk to us. So I just think it's really important for, parents, teachers, everybody that's in a kid's life to just always kind of, remind them, hey, you know, I'm here if you ever need anything,
exactly.
you know,
Yes,
just to remind them, because sometimes when you get in depression or anxiety and stuff, you don't remember, the five people that told you, hey, I'll be
I
here for
know.
you, so, I
You're in the
constantly
cave. You're in the cave of
you
darkness,
don't
you
see
know?
anything but the
Yeah,
darkness. And
yeah,
that's why 988 is so important. And like how you're
yes,
passionate about writing, and we're very passionate about our jobs, just because it goes hand in hand, just listening,
absolutely.
like with you writing and sharing, your these stories could be put out there, and kids read that, and it changed their whole life, and that's what's important to me. Like, that's more subjects that are hard to talk about need to be talked about. And that's why,
Yeah,
I wanted the podcast, because, I was like, hey, we can bring so much self-aware to everybody about, it's okay if you're not okay. It's okay if
yeah,
you have suicidal thoughts. Let's talk about it. Let's get you,
exactly.
like, let's try to get you through it. Let's see
Yes,
what we can do on our end, so or hey, if you just need to talk, we're here just to listen. So
exactly.
I think
So,
that's what's really important.
and on that note of passions about careers, do you have anything coming up in the future? Any sneak peeks on any projects?
I've got two books. One is it's about a girl who she has lost her mom to systemic sclerosis, which I just lost my mom to systemic sclerosis in
Oh
2021.
wow.
She was only 75 and the most beautiful, stunning, I mean, she looked like she was 50. Um, and so this girl on the page, she kind of reaches back through it's flashbacks. You get to know her mom a little bit. So she is just with her dad, who's really very much like my dad, who I lost him when he was only 50 back in
Oh wow.
1997. I know he was so young. But he and I used to have some pretty because I was very like, oh, I was very emotional and he was very quiet.
Yeah.
And so we would just gong heads all the time. But I loved him to death. But so it's that girl and her dad, and she falls in love with her brother's best friend. So it's kind of like the family is literally falling apart on the page, but yet she finds like some, like, oh, it makes me feel alive again to just kind of hang out with this boy that she's known since she was like 12 years old, and
Oh.
she's kind of like seeing him in a different way. And it takes place for all my books take place in Westchester, which is where I live, Westchester, Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
This takes place in Novi, Michigan,
Oh
because
wow.
I did some research, because the boy is an ice hockey player and he's really good, and her older brother, they're best friends, older brother and the boy that she ends up liking, they both play ice hockey. And I looked up what's the number one town in America where high school kids go to the NHL, and it was Novi, Michigan. So I did all this research on it, and it takes place at a lake. And her name is Ruby Jane Pervick, and I love her so much.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, so that's called Out of Order at the moment. I don't know if that will end up being like that. And then I have a scary book that is based on a true story. My very good friend from college has a younger sister who had probably 60% of this book happen to her and her little 3-year-old son at the time. And it was a ghost situation. Absolutely terrifying. I could only write it in the daytime. I couldn't even write it at night. And
Oh
that's
wow.
called Portal. So those are the two that I'm like really working on. So Portal is very different from anything I've ever written. Out of Order is kind of there's no bullying, but it's definitely a family in crisis
Yeah.
kind of a story. Yeah, so they're the two that are
That's exciting.
closest.
That is exciting.
And I love horror, so that extra excites me.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, I'll reach out if and when I get any information on it. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
please
Love it.
do.
You
Yeah.
know we're gonna read whatever you put out. We
Yeah.
cannot stop it. We can't
Love
help ourselves.
it. I love it.
Um, oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for taking the
Oh,
time to talk with us and be with us. And thank you for what you do, and not only just with your writing, but what you've done in the classroom, what you do with your speaking, and then connecting with your readers. It is just truly
thank you
amazing.
for having
I was
me.
gonna say you don't just talk the talk, but it's like you don't just write the words.
I
It's
am
Yeah.
very, very
truly,
passionate. And that is the truth. I have a lot of feelings about it. That,
I'm
yeah,
we're so glad. And it's just thank you so much. Thanks for having
I'm
some real talk.
honored, really honored to be here. I mean, you two are just wonderful, and it was such a great interview. It was
Yeah, it was
wonderful.
definitely one of our best interviews. And like I said, we are very grateful that you came on with us, and we look forward for your projects in the future because we will be reading them.
That's very exciting. But
Yes.
Yeah.
yes,
And then we will talk
thank
to
you,
you.
and thank you for all the work you two do as well. I mean, so
Th-
important and so necessary, and it's so nice to talk about this stuff with people that get it. So,
yeah,
Well,
I
thank you.
agree.
Thank you for having some real talk with us. And real talk disclosure, if I'm weird on the audio afterwards, Zoom kept kicking me on and off. Thank you, Kate and Jesse, for rolling with it. Y'all know how we do things around here.
Yes.
But this has been so amazing. Okay, Jesse, let's cap it off by rocking it with our sign off. You ready?
Are you ready?
All right, this has been Real Talk with Jesse and Sherrod. No
No
filters,
filters, no
no fluff,
fluff, just
just
real
real
talk.
talk. Thank
love it,
you.
love it.
Thank you.